Thinking about launching a podcast but overwhelmed by all the moving parts? At TurnKey Podcast Productions, we take the hassle out of podcasting so you can focus on the talk, not the tech. From concept to launch, guest booking to post-production, we handle everything. Need a strategy to grow your show and turn guests into clients? Yep, we do that too. DIY or done for you, we've got the solution that fits. Whether you're just getting started or ready to scale, TurnKey is your behind-the-scenes podcast team. TurnKey Podcast Productions. Your voice, your message, fully produced. Learn more at turnkeypodcast.com/contact. That's turnkeypodcast.com/contact.
Here's what's next on the Nice Guys on Business.
A Day for Leadership are these fascinating but little known leadership stories from D-Day, one of the most important days in history, and a day that's just full of all these incredible stories that are relevant for today's leadership teams. It does feel like that's two completely different shelves on the bookshelf, if you will, that you would find those books in, but they're all leadership books because getting a company ready for exit, maximizing its value in a sale, if we're pursuing a sale one day, preserving the company intact for future employees to own or future family members to own is all about building an excellent leadership team. And A Day for Leadership are these leadership lessons that are designed to create these incredible, engaging, and riveting leadership stories for today's teams to apply to their high-stakes business situations.
No, they're not superheroes, but that's just because they couldn't decide on what color to make the costumes. Although they do wear capes. Everywhere. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by TurnKey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
Hey, Nice Guy community, what if everything you thought about building a great company was, well, wrong? Those are my words, not our guests. Well, Patrick Ungashick, he's here to challenge the status quo. He's an expert in exit strategy and leadership, and his new book, A Day for Leadership, brings powerful historical stories into today's boardrooms. If you're a business owner or exec trying to build a high-performing team, this is the episode for you. Patrick, great to have you on. Welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Thank you, Doug. It is a real treat for me to be here with you today and your listeners.
Now, I share, I guess, oftentimes the initial, maybe the journey, the origin story of someone's company or their legacy or where they started. And I don't see you as somebody that was sitting on the playground in third grade saying, you know what, I'm going to be a leadership coach when I grow up, and then I'm going to write a book called A Day for Leadership. When did you realize that leadership was one of those areas where it's not front line, it's actually the guy that's at the top of the organization, he's really the one that I need to teach? When did you start to realize that?
I think I had that lesson beaten into me. It wasn't in the playground, but it was only a few years later when I started working. I started out as a junior investment banker in New York City, and it didn't take me very long to realize that every conversation with a business owner or ownership team or leadership team about achieving a successful exit, every conversation started, focused on, and ended with the quality of the company's leadership team. I mean, if you're buying a business and you're the buyer, you want to know about the strengths of the team. If you're a successor in a family-owned business, you want to know about the strengths of the leadership team because everything is going to happen or not happen depending upon how strong that team is. So from very early in my career in exit strategy and exit consulting, didn't take much. I was at least bright enough to pick up on the fact that it's all about building a great team.
When did that word culture creep into the corporate environment? It used to be, if I remember, getting my start in corporate America, probably in the 80s. But if I think back to like my parents and my grandparents, they went to a company. It was led by this guy sitting in an ivory tower, basically, right. Imparting his rules. It didn't matter, don't do as I do as I say. When did culture get to be that important to a leadership team?
That's a fascinating question, and I don't know the answer to when the specific word was used, because I know we're going to talk about my new book in a few minutes, but then one of the stories in the new book is all about culture. And of course, the stories are from the D-Day battle, that turning point in World War II. One of the stories is entirely about culture, but the word culture is never used. by the leaders. So somewhere between 1944 and today, culture became not only this word, but I mean, culture is not a strategy for building a business. It is the strategy for building a business. And I don't know when that light bulb went off. And honestly, different leaders, the light bulb has gone off to a different degree. But yeah, if you want to build a high performing company that sustains growth over the long term, you got to build a high performing team. And it's not a secret, but what's the number one ingredient to building and keeping aligned a high performing team is have an effective culture.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine how, I mean, Strick and I talk about this all the time, and we're just run a very small company of 20 folks. And what's interesting is that we really do make sure that we don't want to do our team's jobs. I mean, that's why we brought on our team. We wanted to do a good
Right.
job of delegating responsibility. And it seems like micromanagement is a tough part of the wrong way of it's the wrong way to lead a team by doing everything on your own. You'll never be put yourself out of a job that way, but you'll also work yourself to death. So how do you look at, and when you go into an organization, you first start talking to teams or to leadership, how do you direct them? You might see a company that is completely top heavy and they are doing everything. How do you get them to relax from that so that their company becomes either more saleable or their team becomes more teachable or they have a good environment that's going on? How do you start to recognize that symptom in an organization?
Yeah, it's a journey and it's a never-ending journey. I mean, you're never done molding or influencing or shaping culture. That's not a project that has a finish line to it. It's a constant effort and a level of attention. But if the culture is not where the leaders want it to be, usually that manifests in pain points, right? Where we've bumped up against a ceiling, we seem to be unable to grow. We don't hold on to as many customers as we know we should be. We're not holding on to our top people as effectively as we should be. So usually there's pain points, and it's not unusual that a lot of business leaders will find themselves spending a lot of time thinking about that pain point, when really, if you can stop and take a look and just take a half a step back, the pain point is more of the symptom than the problem. And the symptom is there's something inherently not firing at the level that we want it to be and need it to be regarding our organizational culture.
I think about I think there's just been two others. There may be others in your past, but I think about two other books that you had written. And where did those books leave off and this new book, A Day for Leadership, come in? Because it seems like while there is some overlap, there's probably a lot of new stuff in this book that you're bringing to the table.
Yeah, there is definitely a lot of new stuff. There's a little bit of getting out of my comfort zone, at least from a content standpoint. So thank you for asking. I have written these two previous books helping business owners get ready for exit, get themselves ready, get their companies ready. The first one is called Dance in the End Zone. And the second one is called A Tale of Two Owners, which, as far as I know, Doug, is the only book out there designed for business partners. Because when you co-own a business with somebody and you're thinking about exit, you got to think about everything, but you got to think about it alongside
Right.
your one or more other partners, right? And then the new book is called A Day for Leadership. And A Day for Leadership are these fascinating but little known leadership stories from D-Day, one of the most important days in history, and a day that's just full of all these incredible stories that are relevant for today's leadership teams. It does feel like that's two completely different shelves on the bookshelf, if you will, that you would find those books in, but they're all leadership books, because getting a company ready for exit, maximizing its value in a sale, if we're pursuing a sale one day, preserving the company intact for future employees to own or future family members to own, is all about building an excellent leadership team. And A Day for Leadership are these leadership lessons that are designed to create these incredible, engaging, and riveting leadership stories for today's teams to apply to their high stakes business situations.
So bridge the gap for me, if you would, because when I think about leadership, I don't necessarily think about war. But I know that there's probably a lot of strategy that is employed both in war and in business leadership and running an organization. So connect maybe through one of the stories maybe that you share in the book. Talk about it.
That's a great point. Looking at history books and applying them in business is not new. I mean, one of the best-selling history books of the last 50 years is Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
Right.
And there's other examples out there. What's different about this is, there are really three things I was trying to achieve with this book. One is business teams today need powerful stories of leadership in action. We're human. We love stories. We
Yeah.
love stories in our movies. We love stories in our books. We love stories in our personal lives, in our family history, in our cultural touchstones. We are drawn to stories. Very famous author, speaker, Brene Brown has this quote that I've loved for years, and that stories are nothing but data with a soul. I mean, I just love
Yeah.
that insight. So there are three things. Number one is business leaders and teams need stories in order to learn and grow and develop from. The second thing is the stories. You can look anywhere in history and find great stories. World War II happened only 80 years ago. We still, every day, we celebrate the anniversary of D-Day. It's bottomless for its power and its draw in terms of stories. And frankly, for as recent as it was and for as earth shaping as it was, it's actually not mined very much for leadership stories in today's business environment. And then the third thing I was trying to achieve with this book is, we've been talking for 10 minutes now, Doug, about the importance of building a team and the importance of culture. There's actually remarkably few resources out there for business leaders, managers, executives to bring their teams together and do team learning and team alignment. I mean, there's amazing leadership books out there. There's constantly a wonderful new supply being written all the time. Most of them are written for an audience of one. They're designed for one leader to read and one leader to figure out how to apply and take back to her or his organization. This book is specifically written for teams to experience together.
Well, I think about a day for leadership as it relates to war, and then I started thinking about, okay, all of these things that are involved: strategy,
Right.
culture, delegation of responsibility, decision making under pressure. Do any one of those four things that I just mentioned, strategy, culture, delegation, or decision making under pressure, do any one of those kind of rise to the top of the priority schedule when it comes to leading properly an organization?
But I think you can make an argument for any one of the four. And it's funny. I don't know if you picked those out of the thin air, but the book, A Day for Leadership, has 8 standalone case studies. Each one of them touches on a key leadership theme. And you just identified 4 of the 8.
Okay, well, good. Well, great minds think alike then. That's
well,
good.
they do. And so let's talk about culture for just a minute. You asked me about an example from the book. So most people, of course, have heard about D-Day, know a little bit about it. And most people are familiar with Omaha Beach, which was one of the 5 invasion beaches. Saving Private Ryan made that part of our cultural landscape when that film came out about 20 years ago now.
Yeah.
The details that from there is there was one U.S. Army unit, the United States 1st Division. They're famous for a patch on their shoulder that identified them, the big red one. And they were first in name and first in fame. They were the most accomplished division. And Allied leaders, the British and the Americans, only wanted Omaha Beach to be entrusted to the big red one. There were other units that played a crucial role, but that was the most important division, and it had to take the beach because it was the most accomplished division. It already led several invasions. Anyway, that you get that when you pick up a history book, or again, if you watch a popular movie. But what a lot of people don't know is the big red one, the previous general who had been leading the big red one earlier in the war, he was fired 10 months before D-Day.
Okay.
And he was fired because the culture of the organization had gone off the rails. And only 10 months before arguably the most important day and the most important battle in that part of the world and that part of the war, a new general had to come in and he had to reshape the culture. Now, I don't know about you, Doug, but you said your organization has 20 people. My company has a similar number. We think about culture challenges. We think about how do we get 20 people aligned, right? Or 200.
Right.
This general had 14,000 people in his team, all of whom are literally armed. And they were irate. They were upset that their previous beloved leader had been fired. They were upset that they were not going home. They had already served their time in the war. And it's this incredible story about how this general, his name is Clarence Huebner, that, again, most history books just pass over, and what he did and the challenges he faced and how did he remold their broken culture with only 10 months to go before Omaha Beach. Any business leader who's tasked with shaping and molding and influencing culture, it's a story you have to read.
Yeah, boy, that's powerful, and you had me captivated just by sharing the preview of what the story is going to be all about. So I encourage everybody in our community, including myself, get a copy of A Day for Leadership and start the lessons now. I think about leading a small team, and not a team of thousands, a team of a couple dozen at the max of our history here. I think about when pressure starts to happen, the client has a challenge, a problem finds itself, the internet goes down, Google craps, shits the bed, or one of, the things that happen in the course of just any day. Decision making under pressure is one of those things that, I'll create the culture in the right environment, and I'll delegate when things are running smoothly. How challenging is it when somebody's trying to make decisions under pressure of like extreme circumstances? How do you teach them to just stand your ground, just hold on a second, just don't forget everything that you've just learned about leading just because a decision gets to be a little bit challenging? How do you share that with an audience without them, running for the hills as soon as a decision making under pressure starts to hit them?
I think you tell a great story about a decision that had been made under pressure that you and I can probably barely even struggle to imagine. So again, one of the other case studies from the book is a story that is covered in some of the history books about D-Day. It's the decision that General Eisenhower, Dwight D. Eisenhower, Ike, had to make about whether to launch the invasion in the face of hostile weather or not.
Right.
That story shows up in some of the history books. The famous movie from a couple decades ago, The Longest Day, it's this tense scene in The Longest Day. And it's no exaggeration to say the stakes of literally perhaps the war was riding on that decision. Why I think that story is relevant to business leaders every day, because thankfully most of us don't have to make decisions of that magnitude, but the decisions we have to make are pretty darn important, is because decision-making, my observation, Doug, is that decision-making tends to be pretty individualized. We have our own styles, we have our own methods. It's pretty rare anybody has any formal training on decision-making.
Right.
Yet there is so much data out there that shows the importance of having solid decision-making skills and procedure in place. And also tying this back to culture and team development, it's proven that you can discern a lot about an organization's culture by how their decision-making methodology works. For example, is it highly centralized? Is it highly decentralized? Do decisions happen at the right level? Or are they happening too high? Or are they happening too low in the organization with regards to delegating? So the bottom line is decision-making, I think, is an underappreciated leadership skill. It is absolutely a skill that can be developed. And you know me, I'm going to tell you, if you've got a great story about a real leader in action and you can learn from that story, what a great way for leadership teams to come together and diagnose and talk about their own leadership skills and where maybe there's opportunities for improvement.
So talking about that, where there's room for improvement, do improvements get made in the boardroom? Do they get discussed in the boardroom and then disseminated among the team? Do they get made by the leaders? Do they get made in middle management and pushed up the line? What's the best way for change to be made within an organization? Or maybe it's all of the above.
I don't think there's any one size fits all, and I think it aligns with the culture. But I do think that's a fantastic diagnostic question, which is for teams to say, hey, look, when we step back and look, are we happy with where decisions are being made? Do we have a sense? And depending upon the size of the organization, you might focus on just your team, you might focus on the entire organization. But do we have a sense that decisions are being made by people too high in the organization, and that's slowing growth, and that's slowing scalability, and that's sapping energy? Do we have a sense that decisions are being made too low in the organization, and that's contributing maybe to excess costs? Maybe it's reducing the quality of work in the way that it needs to be. What's our internal sense? And then where do we need to make improvements in order to move decisions up or down to the right place in the organization, and or to develop more so that we can push more decisions down in order to increase our growth and increase our scalability?
So as you're listening to this, Nice Guy community, as you're listening to this, you're probably about, I would say, a month or two since the book has been released. I believe it came out June of 2025. Is that right?
Yeah, actually, by the time we're recording this, just a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, just a couple weeks ago. And it looks, just based upon the reviews, it's getting some really, really positive reviews. How is it received, in your estimation? How is it being received by those that are putting the? I know it's only been a few weeks, but I know these strategies have also been things that you have been thinking and playing with for the last many years. How are these strategies that you've employed in the book being received by the corporate world?
This has been so fun for me. A lot of people are naturally gravitate towards history, so this is kind of an easy connection for them. Some of the favorite moments I've had so far is talking to business leaders who go, I normally don't read history, but I couldn't put this down. That's really rewarding for me to, every author treats their latest book like a baby that, just came into the world. So that's really rewarding to hear. Probably what's even more rewarding is I'm starting to hear business leaders who are using some of the lessons of the book and applying it within their own organizations. Just recently, I was talking with the CEO of a good-sized company, a 500 employee or so company in the Midwest, and they're struggling with resource allocation. They have more things they want to get done than they have tools and people and capital to do so. One of the stories of the book is about the Germans preparing for D-Day. They, of course, were holding onto Europe, and they wanted to keep holding on to Europe, and they wanted to defeat the invasion that everybody knew was coming. But they didn't have enough tanks to go around. So the story is not about tanks. The story is about how the German leaders struggled with and ultimately failed to move the tanks around on the map in such a way to protect against the invasion because the senior German leaders couldn't agree on a strategy. It's a case study on how not to do strategy alignment. Anyway, I was talking with this CEO of this Midwest company just recently, and he said, look, I love this story. We're struggling. We don't have enough tanks to go around, and we don't know where to put our tanks. Now, Doug, if anyone would have overheard that conversation, they would have been like, what are these people talking about? But it was really fun and honestly very honoring. I felt very honored to hear that he was borrowing a metaphor from the book because he saw it going on in his company right now in action.
That is very proof positive that the words that you're writing in the book are important and are being heard by those that are reading it. When did you realize that what you had was more than just that you could deliver one-on-one or as a team to corporate America? When did you realize that this needed to be put into a book so that these strategies can be used by the folks that you can't reach that are leaders or that you haven't had a chance to reach individually?
Well, this great question. So this book is a bit of a departure for me. It goes beyond the exit strategy consulting that I've done and my company does for more than 30 years. I picked it up and put it down, the book. I picked it up and put it down a few times. About 2 years ago, I went to my own business community. I went to about 25 business colleagues, no close friends, because I wanted people who would shoot straight. Mm-hmm. And I sent out a few sample chapters, and I kind of clenched and waited for the replies to come in. The good side was not everybody loved it, because then maybe I would have been tempted to question the objectivity. Right. But the vast majority said, not only are the stories riveting, and they're not my stories, I'm just telling them. The stories in and of themselves are riveting from a leadership perspective. But what I also heard was, I could see my team going off for a day or half a day in a retreat and just and getting immersed in these real world high stakes moments and then figuring out how they apply in our business. That's when I knew. That was a couple of years ago when I had some test reviewers, and that's when I said, okay, I got to finish this book.
I've had a chance to chat with many folks on the show and outside the show that are M&A experts, mergers and acquisitions, and they get companies prepared to exit. They help people with the purchasing of organizations. How does your role differ from the role of, let's say, an M&A expert, or maybe it doesn't? But I'm just not as well schooled in what you do as several other fields. So, is there a difference between what you do and what an M&A expert does?
There's synergy, but there is a difference. So our consulting business is called NAVIX Consultants, NAVIX, as in navigating towards your exit. And our typical clients are those highly successful, small to mid-market size companies, successful by any yardstick, by any definition, but they're not the large companies that are going to be going public. And the objectives at exit are life-changingly important to the owners and leaders of those companies. You've got a financial win, especially if it's a sale that people want to make sure they maximize. But then just as important as the financial outcomes is our clients, those business owners and leaders, universally, they want to make sure that the new owner of the company is that the company's in good hands, employees are treated fairly, the customers continue to see the same quality products and services. So there's a lot at stake. most business owners and leaders of companies these size, they've never exited before. This may be the only time they go through it in life.
Right.
And if you're waiting to start preparing for this monumental event, if you only start preparing when you were ready to engage your investment banker, you've missed out on a lot.
Right.
So our clients engage our team to get involved with them typically 1 to 2 years before they think they want to exit, to help get the company ready for this invasive and extensive process, and then help them get themselves ready so that when it is time, when they are sitting across the table from a potential investor or buyer or successor, they've had the best possible opportunity to take a lot of risk out of the transaction and add a lot of value into the transaction.
And I'm assuming that you are there with them every step of the way as it gets there. You're not just an absentee advisor that says, tell me what they say and I'll give you some information back, right?
Now can you be an absentee advisor? That sounds like maybe a pretty good gig.
No. Yeah, but I don't think that's the gig that neither you nor I would serve best, being personable.
Yeah, it's about being that advisor to the business owners who never leaves their side, is always on the same side, literally and figuratively on the same side of the table with them, to give them that objective advice and experience, because our team has worked with over 500 business owners just in the last 15 years, to give them that objective advice and experience all the way through the process leading up to literally the day they exit.
So how does it feel to be the author of a best-selling book? I believe that you had the #1 new release, A Day for Leadership, when it came out. How does that's got to impact and land in a good place?
It's a lot of fun. I was flying to a speaking engagement, and I had my phone off on the plane, and one of the few times I remembered to do that. And we landed, and I turned my phone back on, and I had a text from the publisher right at the top saying #1. And so, yeah, it's writing this book was an expansion of my focus as a leader and as an author and a speaker, but it also really required me to ask for a whole bunch of help. I mentioned I had 25 business colleagues who read some sample chapters. Since then, I've been so thankful and so amazed at hundreds of people who have stepped up with either Amazon reviews or sharing it with their community, promoting on LinkedIn. That's why it's gotten that #1 status. It's because of all the other work involved. And it's been really personally exciting for me.
Promote. That would be my best advice.
Promote. Yeah,
I just got
right.
one book going on in my past. I wrote it in 2015. I could not imagine doing all the heavy lifting again. And I know that you and your team have done a great job of not only putting the book together, but it takes a team. It takes a good culture to put together a good marketing plan as well. So congratulations for that.
Thank you. Yeah, when the book is done is when the real work starts.
I know. You're not kidding about that. And before we go, I'm just really curious. What you said just a moment ago sparked a question for me. I know that because you have an opportunity to share your message not just in a boardroom, but from the stage also with a podium, or you walking around the stage. When you come off the stage, oftentimes people have questions for you about the content that you bring to the stage. Is there anything that stands out to you as a more popular question, or something that people are always asking you as you come off the stage, no matter where you are in delivering your speech?
Yeah, probably when I'm talking specifically about exit strategy and exit preparation, Doug, probably the #1 question I hear most often is, when do I need to make this a priority? In other words, how far in advance? I know I want to exit by a certain age or a certain timeline. And I always answer straight, even though I know the answer runs the risk of sounding self-serving, because we're a consulting company that offers, exit planning services.
Right.
But the answer is as soon as possible, because an exit is a significant event for the owners, the executives, the employees, the teams, the customers, the lenders, et cetera. There's an immense amount of moving parts. And it's like any other major strategic initiative. The more runway and the more breathing room you give yourselves as a leadership team and ownership team, the more careful and measured and ultimately successful you can be. So my ultimate litmus test, to really where the rubber meets the road, I share with business owners, is if you have intentions or aspirations around exiting any time in the next 5 years, you're already in that last stretch. I mean, 5 years, Doug, as you know, that's 60 months. That flies by.
Right.
At the end of this year, we're recording this halfway through this year. The end of this year is only 6 months away. So if someone's on a 5-year journey, or at least they're telling themselves that 6 months from now they've already lost 15% of their time available. So
right.
So I think that probably the biggest question, the most commonly asked question, and perhaps maybe the advice I would share with all business owners and leaders, is if you are telling yourself this maybe is something I want to do and I want to do it in the next few years, it's time to make it a strategic priority now.
Okay, great advice. Really, really great advice. My partner and I have discussed many times. Do we have an exit plan in place? Do we have a strategy in place? We're not a multi-million-dollar organization, and even the folks that are in the role of consulting have said exactly what you were saying. The greatest advice that I could give anyone that is thinking about this is it's never too early to plant that tree. Plant it now. Just start the process going. And if Patrick is if you've gotten along with this episode today and you feel like, hey, this is a good way for me to prepare myself for exit, step one, check out A Day for Leadership. It's available on Amazon. We'll make sure we put the link in the show notes. It's available on his website as well. That would be the first place that I would have you go to. A real easy website to be able to get to. Patrick, fill in the blank here. What is the website?
Well, the website is my name, so it's www.patrickungashik.com. It should be easier than it sounds, just to make it my name. But then when your name is Ungashick, right, that's already going to trip some people up.
No worries. You don't have to worry about spelling it. We'll put a link in the show notes so everybody has access to get there. But step one, check out the book. That'll be your entree into Patrick's world. Second thing is, if you're thinking about, if you own an organization, you're thinking about it at some point in the future, you're going to exit, probably a good idea to get in touch with Patrick and his team so they can at least plant the seeds to make it happen down the road. Anything am I missing to ask you before we head out of here, Patrick?
Oh, I thought we had another 2 hours to go.
Excellent. Well, I'm happy to, you said at the beginning this, I'm happy to go on as long as you want to, and you're actually legitimately saying that if you want to go on for another 2 hours.
No, you've some great highlights. It's been a real treat for me to be with you today. I would just repeat, just for emphasis, that really as business leaders, it all starts and it all ultimately will successfully continue for the long term, and about that legacy by just building great teams.
Well said. Well said. Well, Patrick, thanks for sharing your book, your knowledge, your wisdom, and your business with us today. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Doug. I appreciate it so very much.
Hey, Nice Guy community, never underestimate the power of nice, or the power of a team that is guided towards a positive culture. A Day for Leadership is the way to get there. Just check out the link in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
Thanks for listening to the Nice Guys on Business. Please go to patreon.com/niceguys. And for as little as $1 a month, you can help support this show. You remember that thing down in Panama, right? Come on, you owe them.